Hey, I'm Fred.
And I'm Ant.
And this is Creator Generation.
Create a generation of hype.
All right, Frederico, what is happening this week?
This week we're chatting to KATI Morton, who is a licensed therapist and a YouTuber, and she makes some really great videos on mental health.
Like our brain seeks out threat. So when we hear negative things, we remember those. But it's hard for us to absorb the positive ones because those aren't threatening.
That's right, and KATI joins us to share her top tips and advice for creators to deal with things like burnout, anxiety, and just general mental wellness. Before we get started, we've been working really hard in the background on our own online course called Change Your College, the online college just for content creators. Check it out at
changercollege.com. That's CHANGER college.com.
Let's get into it.
Let's get into it. KATI Morton, welcome to Creator Generation. So good to have you on the show.
Yeah, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
KATI, we have a history of me telling who our guests are and what they do. I do a really bad job, so I've outsourced that now to our guest creators and experts. So can you please introduce yourself and tell us, who you are and what you do?
Yeah, my name's KATI Morton. I'm a licensed therapist and YouTube creator. I have a mental health channel on YouTube where I educate about all things mental health related.
That's very succinct, much more succinct than I could possibly ever hope for.
I'm used to saying it, I suppose.
So as a therapist, why are you creating YouTube content? Like, how'd that happen?
It was actually my husband's idea. He went to an event we've been on YouTube for 8 years, and people were talking about the power of YouTube and reaching people. And at the time I was still in graduate school or just finished graduate school. Anyway, I was still gaining my hours and working in the field. And I was talking about how people don't really understand mental illness or eating disorders. People are always, there's such a stigma and all this stuff. And he was like, well, why don't you put it on YouTube? Teach people, talk to people. And of course, like anybody at that time back in 2010, I was like, no, that's weird. And then after him sending me videos from Jenna Marbles and Anna Akana and all sorts of different people that were on the platform at that time, he was like, this is a thing people do. You should do that. And then we started. It was like really late in 2011. I want to say it was like November. I was like, okay, we'll do it. Okay, fine. And then here we are.
How did oh God, there's so many places I want to go talking to you, KATI, both as a creator and your expertise. But how did you get over the whole this is weird, and then put yourself in front of the camera?
Yeah, definitely my first maybe year of videos. I'm not sure. I'd have to look back, but even the first 3 years are still kind of cringy to me. I think you just feel awkward. Everybody feels uncomfortable in front of the camera, or most people. I shouldn't say everybody. Probably 90% of people. You're like, ugh, I don't know what to do with my hands, and this is weird. And I think honestly, just like anything, it's weird at first, and then you just slowly get used to it. So it becomes, like old hat, as they say. So I think if you've watched me for many years, the first videos are just very cold, very clinical. It's like honestly, it's more therapist-y me, like in my office where it's quiet and I talk slower. And now it's more who I really am in my regular life. Like there's more personality to it. I'm much more animated, even with gesturing with my hands and stuff like that. So I think it just takes doing it over and over and over until you're like, well, I guess, it's not as weird as I thought it was going to be.
And were you worried about putting yourself out there?
I don't think I thought about it. I know that's weird. I think now people think about it, but back then it was no one was really doing it. And I was just doing it because I felt like it was something that needed to happen. That, mental health information should be available for everybody. Why is that not a thing? And you couldn't make money at the beginning. I wasn't really able to make any money off of it because I wasn't in the partner program. I couldn't even make thumbnails. I think it was kind of just a hobby. And I just thought, this is a weird thing I'm trying out. I don't know. I never thought about it as putting myself out there. Although because I wasn't licensed yet, I did have to ask my then supervisor, Patty, if it was okay if I did it, because I'm under her license as a therapist because she's training me. And she was super stoked and so excited about it. and was like, you do it, go for it, get it.
Awesome.
So thanks, Patty.
Patty sounds rad. I like Patty. Right.
So
Mhm.
what's it like going from starting out like that to sort of being known now as like the YouTube therapist?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a slow grow, I guess. I think there have been a few huge transitions for me personally. Like, I quit my full-time job at the hospital about, I guess, 4 years ago now, a little over 4 years. It's been 4 years in March, this last March. So that was a huge transition where it went from just being like a hobby and things to like being like more of a full-time job. And I still see patients in my private practice, but I think the shift for that was huge. And then I think also, just the slow and steady growth on the platform. I've had no viral hits. That's not really the nature of my channel, but definitely some key collaborations, whether that's back in, I don't know, like 2017 with Hannah Hart, or more recently with Shane Dawson. Those were large collaborations for me at the time. The Try Guys, it's helped really move the channel along and helped it grow to where more and more people are aware of it. Because often when I go to events like a VidCon or Playlist Live, they always say like, oh, I didn't know you existed. That's so cool. And I'm like, yeah, I exist today. So
I think the first time I came across you was actually from inside the creator studio when they have feature videos, and there was videos on like, creator health and that kind of thing. And then from there, I watched quite a few of your videos and like, oh, this is really interesting. So you must have all these different places people are finding you from.
yeah, I mean, I definitely do, different podcasts, different, like I did do I forget, it's not Creator Insider, it was the Creator Academy where I did the Creator Burnout series, and that really got traction. Yeah, I'm always curious whenever I meet fans or viewers. I'm always like, how'd you find me? What happened? And sometimes they'll say the obvious, like the Shane Dawson thing, or they'll be like, it was just recommended to me. I was watching something else and I was like, hey, that sounds interesting. So I always enjoy figuring out how people came to know that my channel exists.
I was just actually looking through the videos. I was looking at the Shane Dawson video. It's actually not. It's obviously it's up there, but it's still not your most popular video. The most popular one is the signs of depression. It's still the biggest one.
Yeah, the 6 Signs of Depression has been my largest video, but I think it's like the collaboration as a whole, because like his videos get like 130 million views total. So the collaboration I did on his channel definitely brought more people over to mine.
As a YouTube creator that's creating like really valuable, like informational content, you seem to be kind of also embedded in like the more entertainment based creators. Like you're quite connected to a lot of them, like you just mentioned Shane Dawson and the Try Guys. And is that intentional from you as a creator, or are you seeing a lot of your audience, these creators are a great vehicle to reach the people that you need to talk to? Like is it a bit of both?
Yeah, I think it's probably a bit of both. A lot of it just comes from being a creator and going to events and always being open to collaborating with other people, because I think everyone has an audience, and mental health everyone has a mental health, and mental illness affects 1 in 5 globally, which really means that it affects all of us. And so I think if that's just kind of been the grow over the years, as like, because Shane, for instance, reached out to me years ago to be on his podcast because he had questions that he wanted me to answer, because he has his own mental health issues and his viewers talk about things, and he just wanted to get like an expert in. And so I think that's kind of how that's grown, and just relationships over time. More and more as YouTube has leaned into the educational creator, they put on what's called EduCon, and they have them around the world. But the first was in Anaheim around VidCon, the US VidCon. And it was the day before, and it was a great way to connect with other people doing cool things. Everything from like Rachel's English, who teaches English to people, to Diana Cowan, who's Physics Girl. There's so many cool creators. And so that's kind of opened me up more to like what you would consider the educational or expert type YouTube creators. But there's just so many of us, I think. And education is like, not everybody's been doing it for as long. And so people are coming on board, now more and more. But I don't see it like expert or YouTuber. It's like, I'm in both of those communities equally. So I think it's kind of just, however collaborations fit. And a lot of people, like the Try Guys, for instance, came to me with an idea where they were like, hey, we haven't really taken vacations. So, they try things. So like, we're going to try taking a break, and we'd like you to talk about why that's important. And so there's a lot of things that just work seamlessly with them. And yeah, I hope that kind of answers your question.
Definitely. It's just, incredibly interesting. Like, and I think what's really great from outsider looking in perspective is that from day dot, you had this mission and this purpose for the channel and what you want to achieve.
Yeah, well, it keeps you motivated, right? If we don't have purpose, it's like, what's it all worth? Why am I doing this? And I think a lot of, especially young people now, everybody wants to be a YouTube creator. Like, oh, I want to be a YouTuber. That's what I want to be when I grow up. But people don't realize how much work it is.
Exactly.
And it's like, just to put out one video, like for instance, I do get asked sometimes by smaller creators. They're like, I want to collaborate with you. I started my channel a month ago. And I'm like, I'm happy to collaborate, because it's not about size of your channel. It's more about like, hey, how many videos have you put out? And are you putting out a video? Like, call me when you put out a video at least once a week for a year. Then I know you've got some skin in the game. You know what it's like. You know how much effort it takes. Because for you to ask me to create a video with you is I know how much work that's going to be for me, and for them. But you know what I mean? Like, it's an interesting space, because a lot of people think, oh, you just like film it on your phone. And I'm sure people still think that. And you just put it up on YouTube. So easy. You're like, it's really not. And give it a try. Let me know what you think.
This is an area I really wanted to chat to you about, Katie. So I'm stoked that you went there, because a couple of things. One is, well, like you mentioned, I think some research recently came out that more kids want to be YouTubers than astronauts, and that's the first time astronauts has been taken off the When I Grow Up popular list.
Really? I didn't realize it was astronauts. Yeah, I mean, that makes sense.
Astronauts still.
I think actually in China it's still astronauts.
Yes. They don't have YouTube, but TikTok.
That's the thing. Yeah.
And then and how much work goes into it. There's probably a couple of things, but like one I wanted to highlight was like everyone knows of Ninja as a creator, and like there's a stat that I looked up. I remember it stuck in my head, and I fact checked it again yesterday. But in 2018, apparently he said he did over almost 4,000 hours of streaming for Twitch.
Oh my God.
And someone else broke this down. But apparently that's 95 40-hour weeks back to back. So over an average of 11 hours a day. And the dude's married.
Yeah.
And so, yes, he is like in some metrics, incredibly successful creator. But that's pretty insane. And then he actually followed that tweet up when he said that, and he's like, I didn't stream for 48 hours, I lost 40,000 subscribers back to it.
Oh my God. Yeah.
So like obviously that's at the very extreme end of content creation. And he's like, I know this star will not be at the zenith forever, so I'm going to double down on this until it falls.
It's like what's the saying? You got to make hay while the sun shines.
Yes. But you make two, you're no slouch. You make 2 videos a week, I think. As well as speaking gigs. You run your own practice still. You take your time out to talk to guys like us on podcasts and other people. Can we unpack all of that a bit? Like, so probably from your perspective, how much work goes into that from a creator perspective, and then also probably we can dive a bit deeper into the impacts of that as well for others.
Yeah, because I think that like the hours, if you break it down, like if you break down a video, if you think about like even just coming up with the title and the thumbnail could be like 2 hours, because you play around with things. I do searches on Google to see what's tracking, what's doing well, what are other key phrases people are using. Is it bright colors people like? How about this thumbnail? Like Sean and I, my husband who helps with the channel, go back and forth over these things till we hate it. You're like, I don't want to hear about that anymore. And so that's just that. Not to mention the hours of research and writing that I do to make sure that what I say is like actually what's happened, or is how we diagnose. And I didn't misspeak and say 1 week when it's 2 weeks, because I'm a human and oops. So there's a lot of that. And then the editing process can take a few hours. So each video, if it's a pretty easy edit and an easy like research thing from me, meaning I already kind of have an idea, but I just have to like fact check some things, it at minimum we're talking like 10 hours. And that's just one. And if you do that twice a week, that's half of your week just to create 2 videos. And so the streamers also, like, they have to do it live. Like, I think that's the thing that is really difficult for people like Ninja or any gamer out there, is that people want them live doing it and they watch, and that's how they make money. So it's like, you don't make money if you're not actually actively working. And for anybody who's like in the regular non-YouTube, non-creative space, like, I want that to sink in, that like, if you take vacations, you don't get paid. Like, I know as a therapist, I already do that. Like, if I'm not seeing a patient and not getting paid for that hour from that patient, then I'm not getting paid. But if you work in a big organization, you have sick days, you have vacation days, and you get time off. And so I think more and more on YouTube, even personally, we've been talking about burnout. And I think that's a really important, it happens to everybody, from stay-at-home moms to engineers to, truck drivers, to everybody. But I think that we see it most with YouTube because people are afraid to take breaks. Because like Ninja said, I didn't stream for 48 hours. I lost 40,000 subscribers, and that's like money out of his pocket, but I'd like to, like, my plan is to, for the rest of this year and the beginning of next year, to like change the conversation about that. And I almost, even though I know he's being completely honest, but I wish Ninja hadn't said that, because I would have liked for him to say, and now I'm going to take a vacation or something, even if it's just a joke, because I feel like the fear that people have for taking a break and what that would equate to in their business and in their subscribers, views, AdSense, whatever, however you make money, there's this, I think it's a myth, I believe, and I'm going to test my hypothesis. I'll tell you a little bit about that, but I believe it's a myth that you can't take breaks, that your audience will still be there for you. And YouTube, I've been talking with them a lot about creator burnout because they're very concerned, and what's their role and how do they help. And I think, yes, it takes a lot of work, but we can't be afraid to take breaks. And it's almost necessary, because I don't know about you guys, but like, when you finally get a really good vacation, you come back energized.
Oh yeah.
And things are so much easier, like, versus feeling like you're trudging through it, And so I'm going down to doing 1 video a week as of October 1st. There will be 1 Thursday video that goes up because it's World Mental Health Day. Can't miss World Mental Health Day. But that's only once a year. And I'll see how long I want to do that. But I'm doing it because I'm going on vacation, and it's hard to stockpile that many videos. And I just kind of want to see what it's like. And then I may take a whole month off in like January or February and just see how that does. I'm fine sharing analytics with people because I think it's a myth. I think the idea that we can't take breaks is just bull. And so I'd like to prove that wrong.
That's a really interesting aspect. And I remember, I think it was Todd from Creator Insider said, like, algorithmically, there's no reason why you can't take a break. It's not going to penalize you. In fact, creators have left and they come back and they've had, even more people watch because, it's great that person's back. I'm really keen to see what they have to say. But there is that fear from the creator side that, oh, if I go, I won't be relevant after a few weeks and people will have moved on. And I guess that's just balancing that up. To be honest, with the creators we've seen who've taken a break, algorithmically, there's been no real issue. Honestly, the audiences, if they're engaged, they're really happy when the creators come back. So it is interesting, what Ninja said.
Yeah, and I polled my audience just out of curiosity, just to see, because that's the thing, is like, I don't have to keep any secrets from them. Like, I communicate with them, see what they think. And I'd asked, I was like, how would you feel if I went down to 1 video a week? And they were like, quality over quantity. Like, you do what you want. There was all support. I want to say it was like 96% in favor. And also, like, think about Shane Dawson. He takes months off while he works on big projects, because it takes a lot of effort and time and planning and all sorts of things to make sure that you put out a good product, right? And TV shows go dark. Movies are created and then they're out, and you don't hear. It's not like they continue every week or every day. And I think we have to start thinking of it that way. and Todd is I spoke with Todd. I know Todd Beaupre, I think is his name, from Search and Discovery, about the break thing. And he was like, sometimes I think you're like competing against yourself with a lot of content. And so we're going to give it a go. See how it goes.
Do you feel pressure though? Or have you felt pressure to create 2 videos a week?
Oh yeah, 100%. I think it's part of just me as a person. If I make commitments, you can count on me. So when I tell people I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. And I think the belief that you have to at least create once a week. For a while, I did 5 videos a week back in, I don't know, 2013, 2014, probably 2014. Because I had so many questions. And also I think I was just like, I was fresher as a creator. Like I hadn't been in it that long. And people are like, how'd you do that? And honestly, I have no idea. I think I just blocked it out. I'm like, I don't even remember. I don't even know what that was like. So I do feel pressure, but it's self-induced. Like my audience is so understanding. And so like, if I just let them know I'm having a tough time, I need a break, they're like, okay. I mean, it's mental health too. They're like, practice what you preach, do your thing. Super supportive. And so, yeah, it's definitely self-inflicted. I've definitely felt the pressure to keep creating, but I'm kind of challenging that now, especially just because, and I'm sure every creator can, like, this can resonate with them, is like, as this hobby that you did becomes a business, there's so much more that goes into it. Like even just the amount of emails I get in a day, or the amount of requests that are incoming, or I wrote a book, and that was a lot of, I mean, I wrote it myself, like every word written by me. And that's a lot of work. And I think keeping your YouTube channel still going while you're a CEO and a creative director, and you're wearing all these hats, it just becomes too much.
If there's creators listening, like we come across them all the time where they're like, I'm going to start a channel, or I've started a channel and I'm going to create 1 video a week, and then they've got this pressure, or they're in that grind almost of creating X number of videos per week. What practical tips do you have, both as a creator and as an expert in the field, that people can to sort of overcome that self-induced pressure or perceived pressure of constantly feeding the beast?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple of things. There's like logistical things, from like getting a team if you can afford it. Whether that's someone that helps you write scripts or edit, or even just an assistant that helps scheduling. That's been huge for me, just because trying to remember to put things in a calendar and get back to everybody and say, yes, I'm available, or no, or takes up so much of my day. And so I think logistically a team is helpful if you can. And I know a lot of creators out there are like, hey, I'm barely making ends meet. That's because I was that way for years. So I know what that's like. And I think the next is like finding small ways you can work smarter, not harder. Like whether that is breaking up your days from like email management for this amount of time, like only an hour, then creative work when you're feeling your best. Everybody knows what their best time of day is. So if you aren't a morning person like me, like I hate the mornings. And so if you aren't, then maybe your creative time is like noon to 3 or something like that. And so breaking up your day in chunks so that this is when you're doing this is when you're doing that, and you can shift gears and get hopefully more done. But also I think as far as like the need to feed the beast, I think it's like knowing that you can have real conversations with your audience and let them know. And as long as you communicate that and you feel authentic about what you're creating and you're excited about it, they're going to be that way too. And if that takes 2 weeks to come out, or a month, or if that means you produce like 8 videos and then you go dark for 5 months, as long as you let them know why that is and what's going on, and you're still stoked about what you're making, I think all of that will come through and it will be really well received, and it won't be, we as creators won't feel so burnt out, and our audience won't wonder where you went, And especially like YouTube has other ways to interact with an audience, like the community tab, YouTube stories. There's definitely ways to keep your audience engaged with you, knowing you're still there, even if it's just a little story while you sit at your computer and edit,
Yeah. Yeah. And I think also that that thing that you said, that, quality over quantity, that's something we keep hearing from audiences, but also, top creators.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really good point to hammer home to a lot of creators.
Yeah. And I think there's the last thing I kind of want to say about this, is I think that this pressure, and this is something I've been grappling with recently, is like this pressure to work an 8-hour day as a creator. like, oh, I have to get up and I should be working all of these hours doing creative things. And that's just not the nature of creative work. Creative work can be really, really mentally taxing and exhausting. And so changing the way that the conversation we have with ourselves about what we should be doing, because what some random guy like 100 years ago said that we should work from 9 to 5. I don't know who that person is. I don't know why that's why when we have to work, but I don't want that to bleed into creative work, because if you think about like a painter, they can all of a sudden be inspired and they paint all night. And then they don't do any of that for maybe 2 more weeks. And then they come back and, and thinking of creative work more in that frame versus the feed the beast, got to do more, got to put it out. Even if I think it's a turd, I'm going to put it out because I got to feed that algorithm. I know I watch a ton of YouTube, and I can tell when the person's not interested in it, or if it's not their best. I'm like, I didn't really like that. They weren't excited. I'm not excited. So I try to think about that, especially now as I'm like, titrating down a little bit on how many videos I produce, is like, maybe that's not the best thing to feel like I have to feed the beast and to put out a turd, because nobody wants that.
I think that's like a t-shirt almost. Don't put out a turd. Like
nobody likes a turd.
Sorry for all the turd lovers out there, but
it's interesting what you're saying about creative people, and I think obviously a lot of creators are very creative people, and the creative mindset often can be different to other mindsets. Do you think that makes creators a little bit more susceptible to more mental health issues, or they're more upset when they get for negative feedback, or it's hard to handle certain things in different ways? I know we've had creators who've told us like, oh, they can't deal with the comments because they just can't deal with negative comments, or they feel really, really taxed or really, really mentally tired because they're putting so much of themselves into these videos. So how is it, can you speak to that whole aspect of creativity and how these pressures might affect specifically creative people?
Yeah, I think, by and large, creatives as a whole and creators are way more susceptible, I believe, to burnout, which if burnout goes untreated, and burnout occurs, just so we're all talking about the same thing, burnout occurs when the reward that we get for what we're doing isn't at least commensurate or more than the effort we put in. So you just have to think about that, like, because then so if burnout goes untreated, it can lead to depression and anxiety. But if we get back to kind of what you're saying, you've heard from other creators that they can't deal with the comments and everything. Imagine putting 10, 15, 20 hours into a video only to read the comments. They're like, this is stupid and your face is ugly and you suck. Or, you just don't know, right? People online can be the worst. Yeah. And so I think that the fact that we get instantaneous feedback, and possibly feedback we don't even want or don't even need in our life, or people who just are angry at themselves and people around them, and so they lash out online because it's anonymous and it's much easier. That makes us more susceptible to burnout and to mental health issues, because not everyone, like, imagine if you work in corporate America and you go to turn in this report to your boss because they just wanted to see how the stats are going, and somebody out of a closet's like, you suck, this is stupid. Like, we don't get feedback like that in regular life, but we do online. And I think it's hard for people outside of the creative experience to even recognize that, like, oh, I didn't think about it that way. But, that's kind of what's happening. And then if you think about like the reward, right? So if it's connection with other people and your audience is just talking shit all the time and like telling you you're horrible, then that's going to make you feel worse. And that takes that reward away. And then think about analytics and, oh, my watch time is down, or it didn't get as many views, or my subscribers aren't growing. Like, that reward is ever changing, and the effort only grows because we're running businesses and we're maybe writing books, or we're speaking, or we're doing all these other things. And so I think that it's like the perfect storm for burnout / mental illness.
Are there other, like, potentially then other, maybe it's the wrong word, but other metrics or markers that creators should then focus on as the reward? Or like, is it something like?
Yeah, I think there definitely is. I think making it internal, not external, because I think a lot of people think of reward as, oh, it's money, it's influence. It's the power that I have to, bring, sick my audience on someone else. Like people can feel really rewarded by that. And I think the more we're able to look at the reward as like, it's fulfilling to me. I'm proud of the creative work I've done because that was something I haven't done before. Or my editing was on point, like finding things that you have control over that are more internal. The reason that you started creating in the beginning, because I think a lot of creators, we lose sight of that only because we're doing it all the time so often. And getting back to basics, I think could be really healing, as well as just if like noticing things that take away that fulfillment or that joy from creating. If it's like comments and stuff, then maybe just don't engage in those as much. And I think paying attention to that and changing how we interact accordingly could be really, really helpful.
Are you willing to share, like, do you have your own internal sort of markers of success or that when you're creating your content that you'd be willing to share?
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because I don't really think of myself as a creative person.
Oh, you are.
But I went to, the funny thing is I went to this like event and it was all about like creative and how to think like a creative. And the guy was like, people put creativity on a pedestal. Like it's this thing that you just can't, like, I'm into education. I'm not creative. It's just teaching. And he's like, but you're all creative because you think about things differently. You're doing something that's different from the way people have done it. And so I'm trying to get that in my head that like, I am creative.
Hell yeah.
But when it comes to like my internal fulfillment, I think part of it for me is just the ability to reach people. I know that that's so abstract, but just the ability, like I am constantly amazed with the fact that YouTube even exists. Like I forget what comedian it was, but he was talking about just the magic of text messaging. Like that went to space and came down into someone else's phone. And it's like, I have the ability to place a video onto a site for free. Also, they pay me little bits here and there for videos because advertising exists. And someone in, I don't know, Cyprus can at that same time that it goes live, watch it. That's mind blowing. It's amazing. And so I try to just keep the joy of like, and the childlike nature about like, wow, YouTube is a thing. This is so cool. And I get to be a part of it. This is so cool. And so I really like enjoy that kind of like, I don't know, roll in that feeling and absorb it. And then I also like my audience is a huge, like the ability to positively change someone's life is like nothing else. I mean, that's why I'm a therapist in general. So the ability to reach, instead of, 15, 25 people a week, I get to reach like hundreds of thousands of people. And that's really, really cool. And that's kind of what I focus on. Like I keep some really good letters I've received from my audience over the years. And if I'm having like a really terrible day, I'll read them. Because for some reason, well, I mean, we know why through research, like our brain seeks out threat. So when we hear negative things, we remember those, but it's hard for us to absorb the positive ones because those aren't threatening. It's not, important that our mind soaks that in and remembers. And so if you have a negative comment, I'd encourage any of you out there that are dealing with that to read 5 positive ones, because we know that about 5 to 7, sometimes it'll take 7, to negate that one negative.
That's a great tip, but wow. That's
yeah, isn't that crazy? I went down a rabbit hole because I've always wondered why it's so easier to remember that nasty one comment than like all the hundreds of nice ones. It's threatening. I'm like, oh.
Isn't that why like we obsess over certain things? Like it might be inconsequential, but it's like this one negative thing in a sea of positive stuff, but we just sort of, always think about that thing.
Yeah, exactly. That's why.
What just on the comments thing, what about like there's a creator we had on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, Piera Ford. She has framed, I think, like the first really nasty negative comment. Like
framed and put it on her wall.
Framed it, put it on the wall, and sort of celebrates it, and I think every year like has like a retweets it or puts it out as like almost like an anniversary of this my first really nasty comment, and sort of uses that to build a bit of an armor around herself. What about things like that? Is that I mean that works for Piera, but is that something that should be commonly used, that sort of technique?
I mean, it depends on how you are. Like for me, that kind of stuff, if I let it, if I like read it and printed it and put it, it's like, get under my skin. Like it's too much for me. But everybody's different. And a lot of people can see negativity as like motivation. It's almost like I'm doing well. And you can look back at all the like naysayers and be like, ha, I laugh, in your face. And so that might be more her personality, where mine is more like, oh, that was mean. Why'd you have to say that? So yeah, I mean, whatever works for you. Like there are different strokes, man. Everybody's different.
When I'm on the mic.
Fred, let's take a quick break here and just give ourselves a big plug. We are super excited by this new initiative. We have created the Changer Creator College.
The Creator College, quite simply, is a place where you can get a whole bunch of online courses, including our brand new Accelerate course for YouTube, designed to help emerging and new creators become even better on the world's biggest video platform. The reason we think it's pretty good is that it's not just our opinions, but the opinions of a bunch of really great creators and experts coming together to give you a very logical, structured course.
Damn right. It is the college just for creators. So check it out at
changercollege.com. That's CHANGER college.com.
One thing I wanted to touch on is sort of circling back a bit with creators and yourself, talking to your audience and sharing. And sorry, I'm going to babble on for a little while here, but I saw a really interesting session at VidCon in Anaheim this year with a researcher called Kat Lowe. It was a session called beating the grind without losing your mind, and it was all about creator wellness and mental health. But she mentioned something that really sort of struck a chord with me, that people that create, like YouTube creators especially, it feels like you're encouraged, and it's almost like a pillar for success is if you put yourself out completely and open yourself out and vulnerable on the platform. But she sort of pointed out that there is a mental health toll with being vulnerable all the time and putting yourself out in that vulnerable position. Really interested to hear what you think about this. Do creators need to be vulnerable and put themselves completely out there? And are there any potential negative mental health issues that could come with that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that we need to put ourselves out there completely. I personally don't put much out about myself. I mean, my personality is there, but it's no one else. I don't owe anybody any information about me, Also, maybe it's just the therapist in me too, is like, you shouldn't know that much about your therapist. So I don't really put much out about my personal life online. And over the years, people have wanted more and more, and I've less and less been inclined to share, mainly because, and something I've said on panels at different events is like, you never want to give someone the bullets to kill you. And I mean that with like information, because information is powerful. And if you're not okay with, like, especially teenagers too, like if you're not okay with walking into school knowing everybody knows what you put online, then you probably shouldn't put it online. And once you put something out there, you really can't take it back. We all know that. And so I think that pressure to share, sure, you can be rewarded through like views and money if the AdSense, piles up, or you get a brand deal or something like that. I think that then could be rewarding, but I would just caution everybody out there to be very, very aware of what they're sharing and be mindful that you can't take it back. Everybody will know it forever. And just double check yourself, make sure you're okay with it being there, because I don't like that, because there are certain stories that I'll share because I think it helps someone better understand. And it's also sometimes cathartic to get things out. And I don't want to like say that there's not a place for it, but just be very, very aware. Because I actually don't think that is a very healthy thing, because going back to what we talked about kind of before, and like comments and trolls online, even if you have a wonderful audience like I do, people can still filter in randomly and say things that are hurtful. And so making sure you're in a position to be able to handle that, I think, is of the utmost importance, because I could see if you're vulnerable all the time and you're getting negative feedback, depression could be one of the like side effects of that. I don't know.
And from a creator perspective, obviously your success doesn't hinge on that either.
Yeah, not at all. I think honestly it's more about like just creating content that people like. It has nothing to do really with you sharing all of your personal stuff.
And I mean, there are different types of creators as well. Like often the edutubers who are, when people go to their channels, they're there to learn something rather than really invest in the lives of the creators compared to maybe the people who are vloggers or, they talk about their lifestyle on a daily basis. Like they might be more, I guess, you'd say they'd be more vulnerable, wouldn't they, in their approach compared to someone in education, for example?
Yeah, I think just the content itself lends to that. Just, because people are there to learn. It's not like my channel's not really about me, you know? And so I think just like keeping that in mind is good. But also just I just think that like, I don't know, it's tricky because I know a lot of people feel pressured to open up and share. But I think that creating good content can look many different ways. And you don't want to, I don't know how to say this, like in a way that, but you don't want to tread on your life or your relationships or your personal stuff in order to gain, viewers, followers, money. Like what's left for you?
We talk a lot about obviously creator resilience and the people who are, they feel like they're putting themselves out there a lot, trying to become stronger. And you mentioned earlier on, it really does help to have someone there to help you, like a partner, for example. If you work with your partner who helps you shoot, I guess it's a part of your support network. Some creators obviously don't have that and they feel alone. So one thing we encourage is community. Can you tell us a bit like how important is it to have some sort of support network?
Oh, it's very important for everybody, not even just creators. I think having a nice broad support system, and broad meaning some should be friends, some should be family, some should be work colleagues. And I think with creators, we don't go to an office where we get to interact with people. So we don't have those work colleagues. And especially for me, it was really hard at the beginning because nobody really got what I did. And all of my colleagues were like psychiatrists, psychologists, other therapists. And they were like, "You're doing what? Are you sure that's like what people do that?" I was like, "Yeah, I do. I think I'm the only one, but people are doing it." And so that's part of kind of not making it full circle, but back to at the very beginning, we were talking about like being friends with other creators who do totally different things from me. That's been really key to my survival on the platform. And also like YouTube Space LA isn't far from where I live, and I've gone over there, and that's really allowed me to build a greater relationship with YouTube as a whole. And I think for any creator out there, if like I used to buy my own tickets to VidCon and go and just try to meet people and chat. And I know that that's not going to work for everybody, especially if you have like social anxiety or something, but bring a friend along and go and I think YouTube can feel, it's a huge space. It feels like there's just so many people all the time doing YouTube, but there's really like a core small group that you can make for yourself. Like a lot of my friends are animators, and the animators themselves are like a super close, tight-knit group. And I think finding some people who get what you do and understand the ups and downs and the weirdness of your schedule, I think is really important for just our overall mental health and wellness, because we need to have someone we can vent to who gets it. And it can feel really great to feel validated when they're like, "Oh my God, I felt that way too, like a few months ago," and they can go into their own story, and that can just be so validating and empowering. And so I think the more support we have to talk about the ups and downs of work, the better, because we don't work in traditional jobs. So we don't have like the water cooler chat time where we get to like vent about, how much those stupid things we have to put together for our boss suck, or I don't know, whatever it is, the TPS reports or whatever.
I'm nodding my head vigorously as you say all this, Katie, because I can't agree more with what you say, because there's creators we've known who don't know other YouTubers, and they'll be like, "I'm getting all this hate on the comments," and all their friends of support networks just like shrug and say, "Just turn off comments. I don't know what you're talking about."
Yeah, they don't understand.
So so building that community, and that that's a big part of what is at the heart of what we do, is community building for the creators. So I'm glad the professionals agree with us too. It's good.
Yeah, it's really important. I mean, we all need to vent to somebody and have people who get it. And we all need work colleagues, even if we don't work in the same office.
When you think about it, like this whole idea of being a professional YouTuber is a very new concept, and it obviously comes with its own very unique and very new challenges that a lot of, I wouldn't say normal people, but everyone else doesn't seem to really understand. And like, two, it is isolating in many aspects. And we've tried to do a lot in our events. We try to build a community. We've released a free app so that you can at least, jump on that if you want to belong to some sort of community online. But it is so important because at least in chatting to someone in the community or chatting to that support network, you at least feel like you've got that support rather than feeling you're doing this all on your own and no one understands you.
Yeah, exactly. I think, I mean, like as humans, we're created for connection. Like it's part of how our nervous system gets soothed is through connection. That's why like having a good caretaker when you're a baby and like your mom or dad feeding you, like that's part of our connection, how our body forms connections. And so we're like primed for it. We need it. It doesn't make you weird. It doesn't mean that, you can't hack it on your own. We all need that. And I think feeling like lonely or isolated is a horrible feeling. And that's a cool thing about like YouTube as a whole is it connects people. And so, yeah, I really encourage anybody out there to like be more involved in your community. Like I said, I used to pay my own money to go to VidCon, buy tickets, get a hotel. I would go down, and I know that finances can be tricky for people, but make an effort to connect with others in your area. If you have a partner manager at YouTube, they can potentially connect you with people because they know who's in the area. If you're like in Australia, or if you're in Singapore, or if you're in California or Texas, there's all different areas of the world and creators everywhere. So get connected to your local community so you have people to talk to when you need to.
So now you mentioned, obviously, I mean, we've been talking about some of the difficulties creators have, and but you did mention like it is and what you do is you help so many people, and it is actually a platform for a lot of positivity and a lot of great things come out of YouTube. Can you sort of explain like a little bit of the psychology around that, like how so many people have found this tremendous connection on the platform, have found like feel validated, and they feel when they look at creators they find almost like a new family?
Yeah, I think there's a lot I could say about this. I guess the main points of it are the fact that back in the day before the internet, if you were a minority in your local area for any reason, like I'm really interested in this type of video game, nobody else in your area plays it, so you don't have anybody to play with, or I'm part of the LGBT plus community and I live in this rural area where we don't have like a community center where they talk about this stuff. Like, how do I even begin? And the great thing about YouTube as a whole is it's allowed people to find all of their, tribes, as they say. So it's like you get to find the people who are like you. You get to find people who enjoy the things that you enjoy. And I think that is just back to the connectivity and the validation. It's really great. And so I think the wonderful thing about YouTube, even for my community, is like people know they're not alone and the way they're thinking isn't weird. That doesn't mean something's wrong with you. It can be so empowering, so validating, and also comes with a sense of community, whether it's like in a Facebook group or in the comments of YouTube or, whatever you offer to your audience. It's a really great way for them to connect, to chat with one another. And also I think that makes it easier on the creator. Cause like for me, I created a Facebook group and I have moderators that moderate it. And it's not about me, it's about them. I don't really engage in there. Like I might post something if I think it's funny or a cute meme or something, but they do it because the internet connected them and they have a lot to chat about. Trust me, they talk 24/7 in that group.
Really awesome. Hey, Katie, what I want to do is spend a bit of time talking practical tips across a bunch of things that we've seen a lot of creators sort of come across, but also see if there's any other ones that you might bring up. But what's kind of interesting here in Australia, and today is actually this thing called Are You OK Day.
Oh yeah.
So if for people who don't know what that is, it's a really simple mental health awareness day, just to ask someone, are you okay? And start a conversation. So grab a coffee and ask, are you okay? Quite interestingly, I think that's the title of your book.
It is the title, yeah.
Which
I have
is
a funny story about that, yeah.
Which is fantastic. Well, do you want to tell us about your book and then we can
Yeah.
Or the funny story? Is it about the
It's
book?
kind of a little bit of both. So when my
Awesome.
book, we couldn't come up with a title for a while. Me and my literary agent were playing around with like 4 or 5 different options. And I went to Australia for a VidCon 2 years ago or so, 3 years ago. And I got lost, as I do. I'm horrible at directions. And my husband was like, we have to go, we're going the wrong way. And as I turned, it had this neon sign, "Are you okay?" for the Are You Okay Day. And it was the letter R, you know, okay.
Yeah.
And I made him take a picture. I posted on my Instagram because I was like, this is a sign that that's one of the titles. I think we should go with it. And so we took a picture, and that's how we decided that was the title of the book. And at the time, I didn't even know that Are You Okay Day was a thing. But when I had talked to my audience about it, they were like, "Oh my God, yes, it's a day we all ask each other." You know, they told me the history behind it.
Yeah, right. Wow.
Yeah, so that's how the title came to be. And then my book is just like a mental health guide, like 101, because I think a lot of people don't know what they don't know. So how do you even know what to ask, right? How do you form a question if you aren't even sure where to start? And so it's really just like, you know, what to ask and where to start.
Brilliant. We didn't schedule today's recording to match up with that. It's just the universe just came out and did it. So, but I think that's a really yes, there's a day for it, but I think it's a really simple, practical thing. Is like we don't do it enough. Is like you just turn to somebody and you're like, "Are you okay?" There's a couple of sort of issues that we see a lot, and I was sort of like, are there any things that people can do, like Are You Okay? So like one we see a lot is with creators, big and small, is imposter syndrome. Is there any advice you can give to people about how they can address that?
Yeah, I mean, imposter syndrome is interesting because I think we've all felt it at one time or another. And not that it only affects women, but they find it's more common in women. I think I always tell people, I'm like, look for evidence, because we often tell ourselves these stories and make up these stories about us not being good enough or no one liking us. But if we really truly look for tangible evidence, like, do I have a situation or something that I really know happened? Like, I'm not making up that I think they said something or that they were whispering about me, because I couldn't hear what they were whispering, so I actually don't know. Like, look for tangible evidence to like really support the positive side. So like, I am worthwhile. People are interested. I am good at this. I can do this job. People want to learn from me because I have something to teach. And so if you look for evidence to support the positive, because even if you go looking for the evidence for the negative, you won't find any. Like 90% of the time, we don't have any evidence to support those like nasty internal stories. So I think just doing that, making that a practice, where if something is like bringing you down, if it's a nasty internal thought, think, do I have evidence to support this, or am I just making this up? Because it's so funny, but I even do this. I mean, I'm in therapy too. Like, don't think that I have all the answers and have my life all together 100%. I still need my own help. But I will take my own telling of a story over and over and over as like fact. Like, well, I've just known this forever. Like, I'm not creative. Why? What evidence do I have to support that? I actually don't. And who knows? It could have been like a teacher in 5th grade who said something and I just internalized that. And so I think it's like questioning these stories that you tell yourself, and just the fact that you told it to yourself doesn't make it true. And it's hard, but if you're mindful of it, it can be really life-changing, because you realize like all these false stories you've been living through, you know, like you're letting them dictate how you talk to yourself about what you do. And so if you can just for a second slow it down and think, hey, is that story again? I don't have any evidence to support that. I think I should let that go. And it can be really freeing. I mean, personally, it's been really helpful.
It's really interesting. We were talking to a creator just yesterday, who's done really well, and she's got some amazing opportunities to work with big networks like Hulu and so forth, and she's constantly feeling like this shouldn't be happening to her, and she isn't the right person to be there, and questioning her worth in the whole process. And we had to basically sit down and explain to her that, you know what, the reason you are here for is you've done so well. You've brought all these people together, you created this amazing community, all this amazing content, and the reason this opportunity exists is because of what you've done. And even then, it was still quite hard to convince her of that.
Yeah, because I mean, again, it's almost like our brain seeks out threat, right? So wait, this is happening. I don't know why. I don't feel good about it. And it looks for reasons to make us feel bad, you know? I think that's why just being aware is so helpful. That's like goes on to kind of like my one tangible tip that I really feel like can change anyone's life is if you start and end your each day with at least 3 things that you're grateful for. And yeah, some days it can be the repeat, but I would encourage you to come up with new things. It could even be like I can see. You know, a lot of people don't have vision they have impaired vision in some way. You should be grateful. That's amazing. Or, you know, I live in this place where I really love this, or I have a great community. I don't care what it is. I think doing that will slowly help weed out any of that like internal negative shit talking we do, because we do it to ourselves all the time.
What about, so this is interesting, like you're talking about it before, like YouTube creators that they don't go to workplace typically. Most don't. They most work from home or something similar. And a lot don't, in our experience, don't have a very good work-life balance. They sort of will go and keep working, or they'll sort of like the blur between work life and their home and leisure life is just because it turned from a passion into potentially a career. Have you got any sort of tips around that?
Yeah, I do. The best one that I can think of is not mixing your spaces. So when people work from home, some people like work in their bed or on the couch where they normally relax. And I would encourage anyone, I know space can be tight, but please get a desk. I don't care how small, get a chair, get a space where you work only, even if it's your kitchen table. Just pick a space that isn't related to sleep or relaxation, because our body's adaptive, our brain's super adaptive for us to make things easier and to help us focus more quickly. And so if our brain and body associate bed with focus and work, then when we try to go to sleep, it's going to try to work. And so it's a really easy shift to just like have a space that you only work at, that's not associated with anything that's like pleasurable for you. It's just a workspace. Not that work can be pleasurable, but you know what I mean. And definitely have that division, because I work from home too. And we have a separate bedroom that's an office, and I know we're fortunate to have that, but even if we didn't, it'd be in the living room somewhere. I'd probably have the desk over on the wall behind the door or something, you know, just so I have a space where that's what I do.
It's a creator we were talking to. I think he was saying he didn't have much space, but even on his desktop, he had a desktop set up on like it's through software that is for work, and then he can switch that on. This is for his personal life, so it feels like there's an actual transition happening there. I thought that was an interesting thing when you didn't have that ability to maybe have a completely new setup, at least even in your computer working environment, have a distinctly different environment to differentiate them.
Yeah, because we need boundaries, you know, and those little, as small or big as we can create them. And also, like, I don't work on the weekends, and it's not like hard and fast. Like, I never do. It has to be a big deal. There has to be like no other way we can make it work, or I'm going out of town, I'm taking a vacation. But start setting up some parameters, and you know, find what works for you. Because some people do like to work later into the night, but that means to sleep in or do more like your exercise or your other stuff in the morning because you work in the evening. Just start kind of plotting out some loose boundaries and figure out what works for you. It is hard and it's a work in progress, but yeah, just start.
Awesome. What about hate and negative comments, or some, you know, as I like to sometimes call it, unsolicited feedback? Are there any simple sort of top level tools or tips that creators could implement?
There's a couple of things you can do. Like, I hold a lot of comments just from keywords. So if there are certain things like being called stupid, it really gets under your skin, or there's a certain thing people say, hold those words. And I don't ever go into held comments. It's just some big old, I mean, why would I do that to myself? I'd rather roll glass. So I just like let it be there, because I heard somebody say this and it just really stuck with me. And I know it's not what people like to think, but I just have to say it in case it resonates with someone else, is your channel is your channel. It's a dictatorship. It's not a democracy. So you get to decide what lives on there and what doesn't. And if certain comments are super hurtful for you, you don't have to allow them to be there. And that's okay. You know, it's your community. If someone else wants to talk that way, they can create their own community. And so holding the comments really helps. Also just re-engaging with people outside of it. Like that's kind of back to like work-life balance. Make time for dinner with friends, people who are positive. Call your mother as long as she's supportive, and get back in touch with people who are loving and kind. And again, notice your own self-talk, because oftentimes we take those negative comments and tell ourselves that they're true. So pay attention to that and look for evidence to go against it. Those are kind of my main tips.
That's awesome. I think we're going to start just making a whole bunch of YouTube dictators. I love it. That is killer. I think that really, yeah, that resonates with me. I really like that. That's
it is funny you mentioned that, because like one of our policies here is all the guys who work for us have to jump on Reddit and answer a question each day to help somebody out with their YouTube issues. And a problem they often come across with people saying like, there's all these people saying all these different things on my channel. Like, what should I allow? I mean, I should have comments active, but like everyone's saying all this stuff, and some of the best feedback is like, it is your channel. Like, this is, you create the world you want to create on that channel. So if you don't like certain comments, don't allow those comments. Like, build the audience, build the world you sort of want to see in your channel.
Yeah.
And don't be afraid of that.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with that.
And then probably lastly, and I know we spent a fair bit of time talking about it, but I think a really big one is burnout. You've covered this really well in, I think we even mentioned it's your #1 video on your YouTube channel, but yeah, but more specifically, probably for creators, first point is like just quick signs of recognizing that it might be an issue, and the second part of addressing it.
Yeah, the signs of burnout are pretty simple. They're actually difficulty sleeping, irritability, like you start resenting your audience, feel resentful of the work. Any little thing can set you off. Also like changes in appetite. Those are the main things I would look out for. Because those are like, the irritability one is like the biggest. That's the one I hear from creators the most. And hopefully people can recognize that, is when things that normally wouldn't upset you are super upsetting. You'll lash out at loved ones, and the resenting your audience. I think that is like a big, just pay attention to that. So those are kind of the signs and symptoms I would look out for. And then as far as like how to combat it, I think it's finding ways to take real time off. That's really, really important. And I know a lot of that's just permission, but I give you permission. If you can't give it to yourself, I give you permission to take time off, and figure out what you need as far as time off. It might be little breaks. If you can't take big vacations because money's tight, maybe it's like, oh, I take, an hour for myself every day where I go for a walk and I listen to podcasts or
like
something.
This one.
Or yeah, exactly. Because that's something that I've done when I'm having, like, I'm feeling really stressed out. I listen to podcasts and get out of my head, go for a walk. Or it could be long weekends, like make sure it works for you. It could even be as simple as like, hey, every morning I spend 30 minutes because I walk down, I get a coffee, and I walk back. And that's part of my self-care. So just weaving in some of those breaks is really important. Kind of going back to other things we talked about, like working smarter, not harder, finding loopholes. Like there's things like Hootsuite and things you can use. I forget what others are called, but that will post to your blog or your Twitter or your Instagram, like for you. So you schedule things so you don't have to be on all the time. And then delegating when possible. If you're able to get a team at all, whether that's an assistant or getting a manager or an agent or anything like that, getting people who can help you a little bit, that's really beneficial. And then having support outside, like we talked about community, having people who get what you do. I know not everybody's as fortunate as me to work with my husband, and we both obviously get it. So connecting with other creators, other people in the space, I think could be really helpful to kind of get it out of your head when you're feeling overwhelmed, and have somebody say like, yeah, I felt that way too, and this is something that helped me. And so, yeah, so making time for yourself, taking real breaks, working smarter, not harder, delegate when possible, and have a community.
Wow. And if people think they need help, where should they be? And I guess everyone sort of needs to work on their mental health.
Do it now, sooner rather than later. You don't have to be feeling your worst to see a therapist or counselor in your area. I would encourage you, if you have friends who talk about mental health with you already or have talked about therapy, ask them who they see. That word of mouth is the best way to get a good referral. But I know in different areas, there's different structure. Like I know in Australia, you have to like get on the list and go through your general practitioner doctor. So whatever appointment you have to make that first appointment to get into that process so you can get paired with someone more quickly. But in the States, you can call your insurance and get a list of who takes your insurance so that it's, feasible financially for you. And then I always tell people, like, if you're feeling bad at all, you should reach out. And I would go online before you call anybody and see if they have a website. Almost every therapist will, and they'll give you an idea of like what they're like. Because therapists don't have a ton of cash, and we're not super fancy, and we're usually not tech savvy. So most of that website stuff we did ourselves. All the text we wrote. So it'll give you a little insight into who they are and how they interact with the world. And hopefully that can help give you a better idea. And then, make a couple appointments, see how you feel. Make sure that you just feel as comfortable as you can in therapy, and that you like them at least enough to talk. But the sooner, the better. There's also online resources like BetterHelp, Talkspace, and then community support like Crisis Text Line, or even 7 Cups is another great resource of just kind of peer support. So there's a lot of resources out there. Reach out, because we all need help at different times, and that doesn't mean anything's wrong with you. It just means you're human, and the sooner we get help, the better.
Yeah, great. I think that's a really great way to wrap things up, Katie. I think this conversation is something that every creator should listen to, not just because it's on our podcast, but actually I think it really beneficial, both big and small and aspiring creators, just to understand the space and to look after themselves. And we're incredibly grateful for you to take time out to spend it with us on Creator Generation.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. I hope this is helpful to your audience.
That's amazing. Thanks, Katie.
Thanks
so much. And super interesting, super useful, especially as you get bigger and spend more time on the platform.
Definitely. And if you need to find a community, we have one at Creator Generation. Check it out at the App Store or on Google Play. Till next time.
See you next week.
Bye.
Generation, look on the mic.